Well, hello, folks. I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. Where we take a look at these markets, we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves just one question, that is, what happened today? What does it tell us about the coming ones? Do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday. Broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little. If you look up there in the right-hand corner, you can hit the subscribe button anytime content is pushed. You'll get notification as far as what did happen today. It was a little bit of a mixed day. We did have some downward pressure again here on the NASDAQ and the NDX, but actually squeaked out some gains elsewhere on these indexes. Overseas, more pressure on the emerging markets, on Hong Kong. Europe traded a little bit higher, but that actually looked a little bit mixed. We'll look at that here in a bit. Commodities mixed as well. Gold, oil down. You actually had nat gas up a little bit, but the big story today again was the dollar. The US dollar keeps rising, but that story looks like it may be changing. We'll take a look at that as well. We've gone a long time without any signals, but tonight we're actually starting to see some. It's probably been a good 10 days now without any decent signals. Let's start with the S&P 500. If we start there, this is an inside day. It's about the same volume. This one doesn't tell you anything. We're going to stretch it out, though, and look at the Dow. We haven't looked at the Dow in a while. The Dow does an under-over on a little pullback, kind of suggesting this one wants to try to turn and go back the other side. NASDAQ. Now, the NASDAQ was a different story. NASDAQ gets down, back over, but actually does a little bit more volume. So you got the under-over, but more volume, so you test lower on price, but you don't get the volume that you need to show that you're really going to try to turn. That one does, given the others, does say, hey, this one probably can try to bounce a little bit higher. And we'll look at a couple things there that suggest that's also going to be the case. NDX was the one weighing it down. You can see the NDX, same sort of thing, a little bit more volume, get under, back over. The bar it was coming into, though, this low over here on this spike, that was a 46.0993 low. Did 21 there, did 19 on the way back. 46.16 was the low, but it closes at 41. So if you do the math and take a look at that, that's saying, hey, you test into this bar, right? You test into the low of that bar. You get up underneath it, right? And we're talking about this bar here. You get up underneath it. You can't stay under it, right? You're doing less volume. That says this probably wants to try and bounce. And then finally, if we move to the little Russell, which is the one that's been giving us the best signals one more time, remember the Russell was the one telling us up here. If we go back and review, we had the swing point high. Remember the Russell got up into that swing point high? I think it was 3 bars. Yeah, it was 1, 2, 3 times, couldn't get over it. Finally gets over it, and then, of course, gives it up right away. But the Russell was failing, right, on this push up. We'd already had the big push up, and we were trying to push higher. The Russell was failing on that attempt to get over the swing point high. Well, the Russell was saying, hey, we're going to try to get a pullback in this area, and nothing else was giving us a signal. It was the only one. Well, the Russell tonight actually has given us a buy signal. The bar it's coming back into is this bar. It's faded into it twice. It gets back. Let's do the numbers on it. The top of that bar, 1196. You close here at 1187. So that looks like a failure. But you have to look a little bit farther. The bar it was coming into tonight and testing into was here. This is the big volume, wide price spread bar. Russell tests into it, does less volume, flips around, does a little hammer reversal. Russell's going to come right back up and test into this area on the highs. So it's going to try to get back up there and test the highs. Now, remember, the Russell is also doing a bullish retest and trying to regenerate higher. And if it's able to do that, then this ABCD structure that's in place may in fact still be a play. And if you look at it closely, right, you've got little ABCD structures that have been playing out along the way. And if this one actually turns out to be another one, you'll have another small one here, right? All of those projecting higher highs to come in the Russell. And so I kind of like what the Russell's telling us from a bullish perspective. That's the domestic indexes. When we come back, we'll look at the overseas.
Learn how to trade with the Trade with LA service provided to you by TA Today. This service includes daily portfolio and comments that are emailed to you before the market opens each morning. We provide a daily view of the markets and a model portfolio you can follow even if you work another job. Every weekend, LA records his weekend broadcasts that gives you a synopsis of the week and a prognosis of coming weeks. You will also have access to our Teach and Trade room, where LA provides day trades and teaches neoclassical concepts throughout the trading day. To get started, go to our homepage and click Trade with LA.
Okay, as we come back here, before we go to the overseas markets, I want to point out, what we had today was we had divergence, listed issues. We're talking about the NYSEs. Those guys were trying to head higher. We actually had the Russell trying to head higher, but we had the NASDAQ, the technology stocks getting hit. They were getting hit off of Apple. Apple drops of 4% or $4, 3.15% today. And, the story there was that the channel checks are showing that, Apple doesn't have the sales going on. Component parts being reduced by about 10% was the number that was spit out there. And saying, hey, season's not going as well as you would expect or what you would want. What you look at, though, when you look at Apple, and what you're always trying to look at, is you're coming back into prior swing point highs that were broken. There's one here, there's one there, and then you've got this other one right here, if I can draw it in. So you've got all these retest, regenerates, bullish retest, regenerates. They have been tested once, but there's three of them. They're getting tested again at this particular price point. And if you throw in the fact that this bar that was being tested today, and we're talking about this bar here, right there, this bar's low is actually where we tested to, and look at the volume differences between these two, right? So you come down, you test, you don't have as much volume, you're coming in doing a bullish retest, regenerate. Apple's going to try to flip around and try to get back up into this gap area and try to close the gap. And I suspect Apple's going to try to trade right back to the top of this bar that it could not break. That price point's about 119.30. That's where I expect Apple to try to trade back to. So we'll see if Apple turns tomorrow. If it does, I suspect the index also is going to get the help from that. If we move over to the overseas markets, and I'll start with just the broad emerging markets tape. That one sells down again. You do a little doji up underneath. A lot of times the doji is the signal that this thing has run its course. And if you look at it, you've got an ABCD structure, and that ABCD structure is done. So emerging markets look like, just from that perspective, they want to try to turn. And if you look at some of these inside, you actually got some good behavior. And under over, looks like the volumes are wrong on this. I think the volume was lighter there today. If we look at some of the others, like Brazil, for example, Brazil comes down, gets under, gets back over, does have a little bit more volume, but it was testing under this bar. And so Brazil essentially tested the lows off this bar, this big bar, wide price spread bar, heavy volume, gets under it, does a hammer reversal. Brazil's going to try to bounce, and you're seeing that in most of these. The bad part overseas is in Europe, actually, and it's not terrible, but it's not congruent with everything else I've been showing you. You get a little bit more volume, you get under over. Right, you're testing into this big bar, which is a positive, right? So you test into that big bar, and you come back up and try to get over it. And if we can just do the numbers on it, top of this one was 10.847. You close it at 10.832. So you're still into the bar. A little kind of a hammer reversal. We may get a little push up here, but there's nothing in the cards here that says you have to. Matter of fact, it says more than likely you're going to try to test down again. And the same with the French market. If we look at the French market, Also not a positive signal in the sense that it got under back over but had a little bit more volume. It also is testing into a wider price spread heavy volume bar. It did not get to the low, and it is not over the top. 49.47 closes at 49.12. So Europe looks to me like Europe is going to trade sideways to down potentially tonight. Emerging markets, Asia trying to bounce. U.S. markets look like they're set up, as I showed you, to try to bounce as well. And so that's the story there. I want to flip over, though, and sign off here tonight with a look at the ox markets, because today we had more strength in the dollar. Let's pull the dollar up because that's been a big piece of all of this. And if we pull the dollar up and take a look at it, the dollar gets over the highs, right, but closes back underneath them, showing lower volume on the extension up. And if you do that extension on the way up, you've got an ABCD structure, a little small one here that completed more than completed. You had another one here that also has completed. So it looks to me like the dollar has done what it wants to the upside, probably going to do some sort of a retrace. And you've got this huge gap area off of the employment number that I suspect it's going to try to trade back into. Now, I do expect it will get bought, but it looks to me like it's going to pull back. If the dollar is going to pull back, you're going to see, gold, silver, commodities in general trying to bounce. And so I would expect that silver is going to try to bounce. I would expect gold is going to try to bounce, and so forth. So that's the lay of the land as of tonight, the way these charts have lined up. Hopefully that will help you out tomorrow to make some of that coin and put it in your purse. Folks, thanks for joining me. You tell a friend, tell two. I'm LA. This is and was your daily NeoTA wrap. Have a great night, and I'll see you next time. Good night.